Hi, and welcome to a new episode of MICA's, MICA's official podcast. I'm your co-host Kasturi.
And I'm your co host, Pallavi. We're incredibly excited to have on board today Mr. Ankit Kasliwal, the head of marketing for Titan's Fragrances division, also heading marketing for Titan's newest and most ambitious brand, Taneira. Prior to this, he has been a strategic marketing leader for the Tata Neu App, a category brand manager for Hero Motocorp, and he's also a MICAn. He has a diverse expertise in a range of sectors: automobile, retail, FMCG, premium, and luxury retail, as well as consumer tech.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. Thank you so much, Kasturi. I'm also equally excited to be with you guys.
You've been at the core of marketing while working across sectors like automobile, retail, FMCG, premium rich to luxury retail, and consumer tech. Can you give us a sense of how marketing has changed and what remains consistent even today across sectors?
So yeah, I think in my experience of working with various sectors, right from automobile to personal and lifestyle categories like Indian ethnic wear for Taneira or premium fragrances for Skinn or consumer tech for the Tata Neu App, I think the marketing has its own shades across sectors. And over last few years, what has changed is this breaking away from the formats. When I say breaking away from the formats, is what I meant is that earlier there used to be a typical format of marketing where there's a brand name, there's a brand tagline, and then there is an ATL, BTL of sorts, and that's how the playbook of marketing was. But now the playbook of the marketing has become extremely contextualized to the sector that you are operating in, to the consumer that you are catering to, and to the market in which your brand is placed in. So just to give you example, like some of the new age brands like a Zomato or an Ola or an Uber or a Flipkart or an Amazon. These brands don't have a tagline. They still have a very clear perception and positioning in the minds of the consumer. And there is a certain playbook that they have created for their own self, and they have gone by that. So that is one clear change which is happening. And there are still traditional iconic brands like a Nike, which still says just do it. But still, there is a lot of breaking away from the formats for the new age brands. The other thing which I feel is that a lot has changed with the consumers. So the earlier, the bigger you were, the better you were, and hence the bigness of your brand or your entity evoked a certain trust in consumers. However, I think that is shifting very, very drastically now. The bigger you are, there is a higher element of doubt in the minds of consumer, because everything which is massified at scale lacks a certain trust with the consumer, and hence the need for personalization, which is coming in regardless of what size and stature of brand that you are. So if you are a D2C smaller brand, obviously there's a heightened sense of personalization which the marketers are doing. But even if you are a large scale mass brands, you need to see and seek a solution which gives customization at scale to the consumer. So that is certainly, I think, is one thing which is changing a lot. So it's no more that you are a big brand, you have a great product and a great proposition. The believability of that proposition, it's under tremendous doubt in this day and age, because there is an opinion and a counter opinion to everything that any brand is doing or saying. So I think that is also one thing which has changed a lot. Another change which I'm observing is that as brands are no more talking like brands. They have humanized themselves to a great extent, and the more they are doing that, the better they are becoming in terms of forming that connect with the consumer. As a brand, I no more talk as an entity to the consumer. I talk as a person to the consumer, and hence that relevant level of connect, which is there or which is not there, because some of the people are doing a great job out of it, some of the people are not doing so great job out of it. Having said that, the counter to it is also is true that the consumers are seeking a genuine sense of authenticity from the brand. So I think the need for authenticity is the most heightened at this moment from the consumers. So as a brand, if you're not authentic, be it whatever that you are trying to do or trying to say, if people find any iota of gimmickiness to it or a sense of a false layer to it, then, or anything which is to, let's say for example, advertisee in their minds also, there is an immediate pushback, or there's a immediate alienation of the brand by in the minds of the consumer. So I think these are the changes which I'm largely seeing at large, which is happening in marketing. Having said that, what has not changed is an interesting question. I feel the power of consumer inciting has not changed at all. No matter if you are in technology, or you are in a lifestyle brand, or if you are in an FMCG environment, or whatever that environment is, the inciting, the more powerful your consumer insight is, the stronger your ability to communicate to the consumer would be. And regardless of what level of AI, machine learning, or any martech, or any automation of programmatic digital marketing that may happen, you can't evade the process of strong consumer insighting. So I think that's something which has remained a constant.
I think it's really interesting that you brought up insights because our next question is around that. And I think I totally agree with you in that the way brands are speaking to people has changed. Like, for example, one of the emerging cohorts is Gen Z, right? And brands are now gearing their communications to talk to this new emerging cohort because soon they'll be earning and they'll be the ones making consumer decisions. But at the end of the day, consumer behavior stays like at the crux of whatever communication we make. And since we're talking about insights, you've developed and weaved your youth marketing expertise to pioneer campaigns for Skinn, which is Titan's fragrance range. So I want to understand what has been the process behind garnering these insights and then implementing them in the real world when you put the campaigns together.
The process of consumer insight itself has gone under a change over past few years, and at least I don't go by the books when it comes to consumer inciting. I would tend to not do a typical FGD, and bringing 8 people in the room and doing a discussion and then trying to unearth insights from that. I think two things which I feel are the most important in any consumer inciting generation process is, first is the sampling piece, that how right is your sampling. Because, and this, people will realize more once they come in the real corporate world, that there are so many marketing agencies out there, and with all due respect to them, the profile of the audience which comes into your sampling, it's very difficult to get them right in the first go. And hence, I personally feel that snowballing is the best way of sampling the consumer. Snowballing essentially is finding people within your network and making them as part of your sample cohort. So, if I, like, say for example, I will give an example of Taneira. So Taneira is an Indian ethnic wear brand, primarily focused on saris. Okay, so we didn't when we started venturing out in terms of building this brand, we didn't had any parallel in India, which was doing a very organized way of brand building in the space of saris. There are a lot of regional brands in saris who are doing very good, and they have been there since generations. But there's not been one single pan India sari brand which is done organized way of retailing of saris. So hence, how do we go about and understanding this consumer, and how do we kind of go about in reaching out to them? So what we did is that, what is, we said that first let us get people who are actually passionate about the category. Let's understand more about them. But how do you get those people is a question. So what we did is that we kind of reached out to people within our groups, within the groups on Facebook. There are a lot of sari groups on Facebook which really come together and celebrate this attire. And we formed WhatsApp groups among these people, and just started interacting on this topic of saris. And basis the interest which was kind of exhibited by these people, we recruited them as part of our panel to understand more about the category, more about their usage, their attitude towards this ethnic wear. The second thing is the way you go about conducting your research, and that depends a lot on what is your topic of research. So something as like a fragrance is very personal and intimate in nature to a lot of people. At the surface of it, people will say very few things about why they use a certain fragrance and why they don't use a certain fragrance, or how much their category adoption is or not, or it's not. But if you dig deeper at more personal level, you will find multiple reasons coming out of the people in terms of why they use a certain fragrance. And hence your mode of doing that research needs to be in a way where people get an environment to open up to you. And actually pandemic has helped a lot in this to us, which is ironic in nature, but it actually has kind of blurred a lot of things. Earlier you had to get all the people in one room, and there was a moderator, and there is certain awkwardness between the moderator and the respondents, and then they open up, and then that they are getting recorded, etc., etc. But now that people are more comfortable with Zoom calls, more comfortable with coming online and talking about it in their own home environment, they are much more comfortable in terms of speaking. At times we are also okay with they kind of putting off their camera and talking, because people are much more vocal in that case. So yeah, that's what largely I would say about the consumer inciting process.
So Ankit, you stressed a lot about the importance of like thorough consumer insighting, but at times, despite a lot of research, also certain things can go wrong. So what I'm talking about is lately we have seen a lot of controversies and backlash around certain marketing campaigns that have also made brands revisit their strategies. So what are some green flags that you keep in mind while designing a campaign?
So, see, we are living in the age of, extremely woke people out there who are, while very woke, but their tolerance to a lot of things has gone down by quite a notches. And we are also living in a world which is a very polarized world, whether we like it or not. That's the reality. The other reality is that, because of the social media, everyone is living in their own, I would not say bubble, but in their own comfortable spaces. So if you are, for example, if you are a left wing person, or if you are a right wing person, you tend to gravitate towards a content which serves you that philosophy, or that stance on things. And then you're served more and more of that, and hence you feel that the entire world is like this. And people who are not talking like this, why are they even thinking about the other things? This is the reality, this is what the world is. And hence more the polarization, because these two people are actually not talking to each other, come what may. And hence what is very important is that regardless of your own stance and regardless of your own ideology, you keep that aside and factor in sentiments and beliefs from both the sides. Because as I said that there's no right or wrong, but unfortunately in a very polarized world that we are in today, the two don't see each other. And hence when a brand is speaking, it needs to be cognizant of the values, virtues, and beliefs of both the sides. And at the same time, as a brand, you're expected to have a stance. So it is, I would say, difficult times to be in, to take a stance. But fortunately we have taken stance, and we have done errors also in that, to be very honest. And with those errors we have also got a lot of learnings. So the green flags that we now look for is that we first ask ourselves, how inclusive is our communication? Are we doing something which is alienating or singling down on any caste, religion, ethnicity, orientation? So first is inclusivity. Second is the context, that are we doing justice to the context? So there are various campaigns that we did, and I will not go into the details of it. Let's say for example, hypothetically speaking, if you are talking about, let's say for example, a communication which talks about Mysore Dashera, just very hypothetical example. So how true you are to that context and how good you have done the detailing of that context is very very important in today's day and age, because there's one thing here and there and people are willing to blow it out of the proportions, which you don't as a brand intend to do. But I think that that detailing of the context is very very important. And the third piece is, if you have taken a stance and which that is a possible controversial stance, you should very well know what would be your reaction to the controversies that their stance might generate to. And that reaction is something which, again, as I said earlier, needs to take into account both the sides of the argument without sounding that you know it all as a brand, and the other person in either of the sides is spoken down to, or it's felt is feeling that it's been condescending as a brand to speak to someone like that. For example, a lot of our ads and a lot of Titan brands, be it Tanishq, Titan, Taneira, or even Skinn. Diwali is a huge thing for us. It's a huge tail event, and anything and everything that we have said about it off late has been met with a point of view. So if you burn crackers in Diwali, then also there's an issue. If you don't burn crackers in Diwali, then also it's an issue. So hence it's important that when you put out a statement out there, you are cognizant of both the sides and not kind of a flag bearer of saying that this is right or that is wrong. So yeah, that's what largely it has been.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that the backlash has become so much more magnified as well, right? And that's also just an effect of trends. The fact that there's enough internet penetration now that people are so online that they can immediately give backlash. Whereas I would say in a pre internet era, most people would at most maybe boycott your product. And yes, of course, that affects the bottom line, but there's no like online visible public relations backlash that would be seen. It would maybe arrive a day later in the papers, but today, within minutes of an ad going live, you can see people's reaction to it, the visceral reactions that they're having. And this is a trend that no one could have predicted given like 10 years ago in marketing. And of course, we also can't really predict what's going forward, but we can maybe have some future expectations. So I want to understand, from like startups and also to large scale brands, you have a lot of like cross sector experience. So I want to understand, according to you, what do you think lies in the future? What are some trends and opportunities that you spot on the horizon when it comes to marketing?
So yeah, this is one thing which I've been often asked at a lot of other forums also. That is, what is the next big upcoming trend, or this spotting an opportunity kind of a thing. But before that, I would once again go back to something which I feel is very timeless, and then we'll come to the spots and the trends. So I'll give you an example of an actual research which was done. There were these two people who kind of unfortunately met in accident, which kind of affected that part of their brain which helps you process emotions. Because of that, these two people were totally emotionless. So they can't feel sad, they can't feel happy, they can't feel depressed, or anything like that. That emotional part of their brain was somehow kind of hit in a way that they can't feel any emotions. So that made a certain section of the society very excited about them, because they are like the perfect people to research on. And they said that let's research on them, because it's often said that it's your emotions which cloud your judgment. And now we have two people in the room who don't have any emotions, and hence they are most likely to take the most effective. So this people presented them various decision making scenarios with all the possible facts and objective inputs in terms of information for them to take the decisions. And guess what happened after that? They were not actually able to make any decisions whatsoever. These people were incapable of making decisions purely based on facts, figures, and objective inputs. The conclusion of the study was that as human beings, we need emotions to make decisions. And we later on rationalize for our own self, with the support of facts and figures, to justify the decisions that you have taken. So, emotion is your first gate to make the decisions, and you support it with various logics, facts, and figures later on to justify to your own self or to others that why you have taken that decisions. So, as a business, as a product, as a proposition, as a human being, you have to tap into that emotional space of a person or of a being, and that I feel will remain timeless, regardless of what happens in terms of technology, regardless of what happens in terms of trend spotting. And as long as you are able to do a good job out of tapping into that emotional need space of the consumer, I think you will be ahead of the curve in terms of the trends and then the latest things which might be happening in the world of the technology or otherwise. So yeah, that would be my first submission, counter to your question in that sense. Now coming to what I feel is the is the upcoming trend and certain spotting that we have felt. I feel there is one upcoming trend which only is going more and more up, is this heightened sense of pride which people have in their roots. It's something which we are observing as a group, as a marketer, and also as an individual. And this heightened sense of pride in one's root is across age groups, in fact more in Gen Z. And I think as a nation, we are at a place and time where there is this phenomena is happening at a much larger scale. And hence anything which is coming back to what I was saying earlier, is very authentic in its offering, is something which is being latched on much more versus something which is not authentic. And that trend you will see across, that trend you will see in the movies which are getting released, how they are kind of getting received or getting boycotted, or in the brands that are being used by the people, or in the content that they are consuming, or in the way they are dressing up, etc, etc. So earlier there was a lag between what was happening in a more developed economies, and then that getting adopted to a developing economic like India. But now I feel that because of this heightened sense of pride in your roots, you are looking for things, for adopting things around you versus something which is really far off in the West. So I think that is one clear trend. Also, when we do any consumer audit of a wardrobe audit or a dining table audit or a bathroom audit for any of the consumers, what we are seeing is that there is a sense of a very curated set of products which people are using. If it's personal skincare, or if it is any lifestyle fashion brand, or if it is any appliances, cookery, etc, and all, there's a sense of curation which is coming into people's life. And hence you are seeing a lot of spurt of the D2C brands which are happening across. So there are a lot of brands which are very small in nature, which people might have spotted on Instagram or on Facebook or YouTube, or recommended by someone from their circle, which may not be big, but it is something which they kind of relate to. You will find that in their wardrobe now, which is a far more easier entry into people's life versus what it used to be earlier. I think overall the consumer is becoming more trusting and more willing to experiment, and willing to give that benefit of doubt to the new brands, as long as he or she is able to relate to the purpose of the brand, or to the philosophy of the brand. So yeah, that is certainly I think is another trend which is there.
So, Ankit, we learned a lot about marketing from you, and I'm pretty sure our listeners did so too. Now, we would like to take you down the memory lane. 14 years ago, you graduated from MICA, and I'm sure it has had the same impact on you as it is having on us. So, what role has MICA played in your marketing journey?
In hindsight, after so many years, if I were to see what role Mica has played in my life, I would say two things, and I think both are in a way related to each other. I think the first thing which it is that it has let myself be me. So while I have absorbed a lot during the 2 years of Mica, but somehow the institute and the environment around you in the institute let yourself be you, which I think is a very, very important thing, because also what it does to you is that it makes you extremely self aware. And then when that happens, I think you also become extremely observant of things around you. And I feel that one of my strength is my ability to perceive, and I think that strong sense of perception comes from my ability to be me, which I think is also what Mica has helped in instilling me. So there is this journey which you go through typically, which is you're in the campus and you are trying to figure out what's happening. You have certain expectations, they may or may not get met, or you feel that is something totally different, etc., etc. And then you kind of accept what things are going around you and all, and then you kind of settle down, and you are one with yourself. I'm talking a bit more philosophical, which I feel is something which is very unique to Mica, because you know at a lot of other places, you end up doing a lot of things, and you end up chasing a lot of things, but somewhere, what Mica does is, it kind of celebrates your uniqueness. And I would always strongly recommend that no matter where you are in your life or in your journey, don't lose yourself, because there is something else which is going on, which seems to be more more trendy, or more materialistically richer, but that could be, at that point of time, the phenomena. But in the long term, if you are what you are, and you continue in believing that, I think that's where you end up doing good stuff.
So, I think we really enjoyed the philosophical angle to your answer. I think honestly, it gives us a little bit of clarity as well as people who are currently students and who will be going down the path that you've already covered so far. And in that path, you've amassed a wealth of knowledge with your years in this industry. And there are all these MICAns who are tuning in, young professionals in the industry who are tuning in. What wisdom would you want to impart to the budding marketers of tomorrow?
Two things. One is your sense of curiosity, and your sense of not being entitled, I think takes you to great places. And I think both go hand in hand. If you are curious enough, then you would be able to strive for knowing something which you don't know. And if you don't have that sense of entitlement to you, then your journey of knowing that is also something which will be faster and easier, in that sense. So, just to give you an example, I feel I'm fortunate to be part of Tata Group, because as a group, these values are pretty much instilled in a lot of people in Tata, and it's something which is celebrated. And, you know, like, I have been absolutely amazed, the kind of humility with which a lot of CEOs operate in Tata Group. I've seen them go that extra mile in terms of understanding, operations as banal as dispatches from warehouse, to understanding how does metaverse works, what does all entails, to interacting with the karigars in the factory, just to know what their pain points could be, etc., etc. So I think this sense of curiosity and this sense of humility is what I feel, in my personal experience, is something which really makes you, you're a sponge which can keep on absorbing more and more, and the more your ability to absorb, the more your ability to grow. So yeah, I think these are the two things which, not only just as a marketer, but I think as a professional and as an individual, I think helps people. And especially curiosity for marketer, curiosity to know people, curiosity to know why people are making certain choices, curiosity to know what's going around, curiosity to understand the underlying behaviors, patterns. I think that plays a big role in terms of, how insightful you can be.
Thank you so much for your answer, Ankit. I'm sure our listeners will have a lot to learn from it. Now we'll move on to a different segment, which is the student question segment. So we reach out to our student community at MICA, and we introduce the guests and we ask if they have any questions. And we received a lot of questions for you, and we have selected the top three. So the first question is from Joel George, and he asks, while Titan Skin is a market leader in India, does Titan plan to compete with designer fragrances in the international market?
So, we are the number one fine fragrance brand in India. And if you see largely the brands which are out there, which is Gucci, Armani, Christian Dior, they are all designer labels, who have come with their perfume offering. And Skinn as a brand is already competing with all this designer brand in a large format store environment. So what is a designer brand is a question in itself, but I feel that we are already competing with all the designer brands out there.
So I think that's a really cool answer, and I think Joel will really appreciate that answer as well. But we have another question from Ananya Sharma, who is also from PGP1. She asks, how do you see marketing to the youth as a cohort evolving today? And what do brands need to do to keep up with their agile younger audience? Some basic pointers.
So this question also is often gets asked, and we always almost treat Gen Z as aliens which have come descended from some other planet, and they have this horns on their head kind of a thing. So at any given point of time there are certain meta trends which are there, and at any given point of time those meta trends are largely applicable to the youngest of the generation at that point of time, because that's the one which is living in that, and the closest to that. So this is the generation which has seen scarcity, which has seen environmental threats, which have seen existential threats in terms of a pandemic, which has seen financial threats in terms of recessions, which has seen warfare threats in terms of Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, all these global disturbances. It's also the generation which has seen everything in terms of instant gratification. So the aggregation of all this is actually a very difficult aggregation to be a part of. And all, I think all these events which have happened in last 8 odd years would otherwise have happened over 100 odd years, for some other generations. So I think when you're marketing to them, being cognizant of this is something which I feel comes most handy in terms of talking to this audience. Hence sustainability, I feel, is something which is a big trend, and which is something which is here to stay. Being uh, being genuine and honest and authentic is something which is here to stay. And third piece is being ability to give a brag point to this audience is something which is here to stay. But that brag currency is a different currency for different cohorts of the consumer. So if you are a phone brand, this set of audience is not someone who would go for Apple just because it's a supremely expensive a premium brand. But it would go for something like there's a new brand called Nothing. It's superb in terms of its tech space specs. So that's a new talking point which anyone owning that phone has, and that's the brag value that I'm talking about. So the brag value is not only a question of how much premium you have paid, but why exactly you have bought a brand and what purpose that brand solves in general for people around themselves and for their own self. I think that's where marketing to this cohort is what makes it very interesting.
Our final question is from Dhruv Bhargav. He asks, Titan has always been known as a brand for watches among the masses. How difficult was it to shift the mindset of the TG, and what marketing strategies were devised to position Skin?
So Titan as a brand has certain inherent ethos to it. While it is for masses, but I would say it always had a premium sheen to it, which is enough to consider it as a gift worthy brand. But at the same time, not that much also that people said that it was not a value for money proposition. So from that point of view, it's a very quintessential Indian middle class go to brand in that sense. But that has also changed over a period of time. Okay, what you are talking about is the classic Titan watches, but within Titan portfolio there are multiple sub brands, which caters to different needs, and they are at different price points. So there is Titan Raga, which is Indian women dress wear watches brand, and then there is Titan Nebula, there is Titan Edge. Titan Nebula is is a luxury offering from Titan, which goes upwards of 2 lakhs and so. And then there is recently there are Titan smartwatches which is there. So I would say that Titan, essentially like any other leader brand, is commanding a market share of more than 40-45%, has to operate across the spectrum, right from the entry to the premium to the luxury. So does Titan also. We didn't feel that it was a shift which was required to be made. In fact, what we felt is that there's a lot of equity which we can ride on, and hence the need to introduce a newer category and a newer sub brand which rides on the equity of Titan. So when perfumes were launched, it was called Skinn by Titan, and Titan played the role of endorser to evoke that immediate sense of trust, to evoke that immediate sense of a parent brand which is so known for its quality and for its offerings. So yeah, that's what that's what was the thought in terms of launching the new category. When Skin was launched in India, the fine fragrances landscape was essentially all international brands. So if you were to buy a good quality fragrance, you have to shell money upwards of at least 5,000 rupees. The category adoption of perfume was less than 3% or 4% at that point of time, and the category adoption of perfume is still very less. Okay, in India the category adoption for perfume is 10 odd percent. So people can afford a four wheeler, but they still might not be applying a perfume because they are not finding the category to be relevant enough, or the need of the category to be enough to actually buy. Versus that, if you see some of the similar nations to India, like a Brazil or a China, the category adoption is upwards of 40-50%. Hence, when Skin was launched, the key purpose of launching Skin was to drive category adoption and category relevance and democratize fine fragrance, which meant that we have to be at a price point which is affordable by an average Indian consumer. And at the same time, it needs to have craftsmanship of an international perfume. All our fragrances were crafted by master perfumers, which are the master perfumers behind all your international designer luxury brands. So we work with only top two fine fragrances house in the world, based out of Paris, and all our perfumers are the master perfumers, which have also created the other luxury designer perfume brands in that sense. So the proposition was to give you great international quality fine fragrances at affordable Indian prices. Hence, we launched it at a price point which was neither entry nor premium. We launched in the masstige space, and hence there is a clear segregation which is there in the mind of the consumer from the DO space. So there is, if you see Fog, Axe, Wildstones of the world, they are largely DO brands who have the perfume offerings. But if you ask an average customer what is Wildstone, they will say it's a deodorant brand. So in their mind, that the distinction is not there. But if you ask them what is a Skin, they'll clearly say it's a perfume brand. That's the strategy that we adopted, that we wanted to distance ourselves from all the deodorant play which was happening in India. But at the same time, we want to be in the middle of the price points, to be affordable and still be compared with international brands in terms of the craftsmanship and the quality.
Yes. I think that gave us a very clear insight into how Titan and Skin really came about with how they differentiated themselves. And we're now at our favorite part often of the podcast, where we do a rapid fire segment.
Oh God.
And so Kasturi and I will go back and forth between some questions. You don't need to worry, you can just like give your first answer that comes to mind. And these are going to be very short answers. So I'll begin. The first question is, what's your favorite fragrance?
So my favorite fragrance is Forest Rouge. It's Skin Escapade Forest Rouge. It's like a woody kind of a fragrance, which I really like.
Okay. What is your favorite medium to connect with consumers?
Instagram has to be Instagram. I think if anything, I have to know more about. I kind of just search it. I kind of know what's the pulse, and also the way Instagram is, it keeps bombarding you with that content after that. So in no way you can escape it.
Okay. What's an ad or a brand communication that you won't ever forget?
I don't know how much known this brand communication is. This ad came, I think, some 3-4 years back, certainly pre-pandemic, I think, which is from Jindal Steel. It's a beautiful brand. I strongly recommend to see this communication. It's a beautiful ad. So it basically talks about, I think, Geeta Fogart, that wrestler. There is a narration going on where she's walking to the arena, and there is a narration going on about how she's not supposed to do what she's doing, and it's in contrast to what she's doing. Visually, it is in contrast to what is being narrated, and it's a beautiful contrast that they have shown. And the end frame just says, Jindal Steel's will of steel. My personal favorite communication is that.
So the next question is, what excites you about being a marketeer today?
That every day is a new day. I think that's what excites me most. There's no monotony, there is no set pattern. Every day is a new day. I think that's what excites me most.
And finally, describe MICA in one word.
I think, Micah, in one word, the word which comes to my mind is ideas.
Okay, I think that's the best way to sum it up. Thank you so much, Ankit, for joining us today. We had a lovely time talking to you.
Same here, same here. I loved it. I loved every bit of this interaction.
Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.